Picture this: you're sitting in a flat somewhere in Manchester or Bristol or maybe one of those gray commuter towns outside London. And you're scrolling through your bank app for the third time this week, not because you're checking your balance, but because you're trying to understand how you're working harder than ever and somehow have less money than you did 5 years ago. The number just sits there, mocking you. Your rent went up again, your energy bill doubled, that pint at the pub that used to cost £3 now costs 7. And every politician on TV keeps saying the economy is recovering, but you look around and see boarded up shops, crumbling schools, trains that don't run, and hospitals where people wait 18 months for surgery. Something doesn't add up. Here's the thing they don't want you to know: you're not imagining it. The UK economy isn't just struggling, it's bleeding out. And the wound opened 15 years ago, but nobody bothered to stitch it up. Instead, they slapped a plaster on it, called it austerity, and told you to stop complaining. But here's the number that should make your blood run cold: £11,000. Remember that number. We'll come back to it, because that's not just a statistic, that's your money, money that was stolen from your future by a system that decided you weren't worth investing in. Welcome to the autopsy of an empire. This is the story of how the United Kingdom, the nation that once ruled a quarter of the planet, turned itself into the sick man of Europe. And if you think Brexit caused this, or laziness, or bad luck, you're wrong. The rot goes deeper, much deeper. And it's been festering since long before anyone ever heard the word referendum. So let's cut open the body and see what killed it. Let's start with the thing you feel in your bones every single day, but can't quite name: the great stagnation. Economists have a polite term for it: the productivity puzzle. But let me translate that for you. The UK economy has been in a coma since 2008, and the life support machine is running on fumes. Here's what that actually means for you. If the British economy had kept growing at the same rate it was before the financial crisis, the average worker today would be earning £11,000 to £14,000 more every single year. Let that sink in for a second. £11,000. That's not a bonus. That's not a lottery win. That's the money you should have in your account right now if the system hadn't broken. That's a holiday, a car, a deposit on a house, or just the ability to not lie awake at night wondering if you can afford to turn the heating on. Gone, evaporated. And here's the kicker: you didn't get lazier. You didn't suddenly forget how to work. In fact, you're probably working harder than your parents ever did. The problem is that the entire economy has been running on a treadmill, burning energy, going nowhere. Let me show you how this works with a little story. Imagine two workers, one in France, one in the UK. Let's call the French guy Pierre. Pierre works in a factory. His boss, terrified of France's strict labor laws and high wages, spent millions on robots, automation, advanced machinery. Pierre walks in, presses a button, monitors a screen, and churns out 100 widgets an hour. He gets paid well because the system he's managing generates enormous value. Now meet Barry. Barry works in a similar factory in the UK, but Barry's boss didn't buy the robots. Why would he? In the UK, labor is cheap. Firing people is easy. It was cheaper to hire Barry and two of his mates to move boxes by hand than to invest in a £1 million machine. So Barry works harder than Pierre. He sweats more, he lifts more, he breaks his back. But he only produces 20 widgets an hour because he's doing everything manually. Barry works harder, earns less, and generates less value. That's the UK economy in a nutshell. We built a low investment, low wage trap, and now we're all stuck in it. British businesses don't invest in new technology, they don't invest in training, they don't invest in machinery. They hoard cash or pay it out to shareholders while the workers stagnate. And the government, even worse. The UK has some of the lowest public investment levels in the developed world. We're trying to run a 21st century economy on Victorian infrastructure. We're trying to compete with Silicon Valley on copper-wire internet and a train network that was built when Queen Victoria was still mourning Prince Albert. It's the economic equivalent of entering a Formula One race in a 1998 Ford Fiesta. You can rev the engine as loud as you want, but you're still going to get lapped. And this brings us to something nobody wants to admit: the finance curse. Somewhere in the 1980s, the UK decided it didn't need to make things anymore. Manufacturing, that's for losers, will just move money around. We turned London into the world's biggest hedge fund. And yes, banking makes a lot of money for bankers, but it doesn't do much for the rest of the country. In fact, it actively sucks talent away from productive work. The brightest physicists and engineers in Britain aren't designing fusion reactors or solving climate change. They're in the city of London writing algorithms to shave a tenth of a penny off a currency trade. We brain-drained ourselves. We hollowed out the real economy to build a casino, and when that casino collapsed in 2008, we realized we'd forgotten how to do anything else. The whole country had become a one-trick pony, and the trick stopped working. So when you wonder why your wages haven't moved in 15 years, this is why. You're not broken. The machine is broken. And the people running the machine have no idea how to fix it, because fixing it would mean admitting they were wrong. And in Britain, we don't do that. We just keep calm and carry on, even when the ship is sinking. Now, if productivity is the silent killer, housing is the loud, screaming murderer standing over the body with a bloody knife. You cannot understand why Britain is broken without understanding that we have made it functionally illegal to build anything. Let me walk you through what happens if you want to build something in the UK. Let's say you're a developer and you want to build a block of flats. So people can, live near their jobs. In Texas, you buy the land and you build it. In Japan, you follow simple zoning rules and you build it. In the UK, you enter the seventh circle of bureaucratic hell, known as the Town and Country Planning Act of 1947. This law effectively nationalized the right to build. It gave local councils the power to veto almost anything, and who sits on those councils? People who already own houses, people who don't want construction noise, people who want the value of their asset to go up forever. They're called NIMBYs, not in my backyard, but in the UK, they're more like bananas, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. And the damage this has caused is genuinely staggering. In the late 90s, the average house cost about 4 times the average salary. Today, it's over 8 times. In London, it's 12 to 14 times. That's not a housing market, that's a hostage situation. And it doesn't just make people miserable, it destroys the economy. Here's how. First, talent freezes. If you get a great job offer in Cambridge or London, where all the innovation happens, you might have to turn it down because the rent is £2,000 a month for a shoebox. So the most productive cities can't attract the workers they need. Second, money vanishes. Young people are spending 40 to 50% of their income on rent. That's money that isn't going into local businesses, isn't being invested, isn't starting new companies. It's just being transferred from the productive young to idle landlords who did nothing except be born 30 years earlier. Third, the green belt lie. We're told we can't build because we need to protect the beautiful British countryside. But here's the truth, huge chunks of the green belt aren't rolling hills and forests. It's industrial farming with no public access, or worse, golf courses. There's a stat that should make you furious. Golf courses cover more land in Surrey than housing does. We have prioritized a game for wealthy retirees over homes, for the people who actually keep this country running. The UK economy has essentially become a housing market with a small country attached to it. If your parents own property, you're fine. You'll inherit wealth. If they don't, congratulations, you're a serf. You'll spend your life paying off someone else's mortgage, and until we start pouring concrete, this economy will stay stuck in the mud. So we've got a productivity crisis and a housing crisis. Bad, right, but here's where it gets really stupid. The government looked at these two massive problems and decided the best solution was to take a sledgehammer to the foundations of the state. Enter 2010. The financial crisis has just hit. The deficit is high. The new government comes in with a catchy, dangerous metaphor. The nation's credit card is maxed out. It sounds sensible, doesn't it? If you spend more than you earn, you go bust. So surely the government should tighten its belt too. Wrong, dead wrong, because the government is not a household. When you stop spending money, the economy carries on. When the government stops spending, it fires nurses, cancels construction projects, freezes wages. Those people then stop spending money in shops. The shops pay less tax. The government has less revenue, so they cut again. It's a death spiral. Between 2010 and 2019, the UK underwent one of the most severe austerity programs in modern history. Funding for local councils was slashed by nearly 50%, public sector pay was frozen, police numbers dropped by 20,000. And now we're living in the ruins. Let's talk about the NHS. It's the national religion, right? We clapped for it during the pandemic, but you can't pay nurses with applause. After a decade of underfunding, waiting lists have hit over 7 million people. If 10% of your workforce is stuck waiting for surgery or mental health support, they can't work. Illness is now a drag on the economy. We have over 2.5 million people out of work long-term sick. These aren't lazy scroungers. These are people who want to work but are physically or mentally broken, and the system that's supposed to fix them has collapsed. We stopped doing maintenance on the country. It's like owning a car and deciding to save money by never changing the oil. Sure, you save 50 quid today, but 3 years later the engine explodes and it costs you 5 grand. We saved pennies in the 2010s to spend billions in the 2020s just to stand still. We closed libraries, we let potholes grow, we let schools literally crumble. Look up RAAC concrete if you want to feel sick. Austerity didn't trim the fat, it cut into muscle and bone. And an emaciated athlete cannot win races. All right, deep breath. We need to talk about the elephant in the room, the B word. Don't close the video, don't scroll to the comments. Just hear me out, because whether you voted Leave, Remain, or drew a cartoon penis on your ballot, the economic reality of Brexit is now visible. And numbers don't care about your feelings. In 2016, the UK voted to leave the single biggest free trade bloc on the planet. The promise was global Britain. We'd break free from European red tape and trade with the world. The reality has been considerably messier. Here's the boring but critical truth: trade barriers cost money. Before Brexit, a business in Manchester could sell something to a customer in Munich as easily as selling to someone in Birmingham. No forms, no checks, just commerce. Now paperwork, customs checks, veterinary inspections, rules of origin, VAT complications. If you're a giant corporation, you hire a team of lawyers to handle it. If you're a small business, you just stop exporting. It's not worth the hassle. According to the Office for Budget Responsibility, the people who check the government's homework, Brexit is on track to reduce the UK's long-term GDP by about 4%. 4% might sound small, but that's roughly £100 billion a year. That's almost the entire education budget. Gone, vaporized into red tape. But the real damage wasn't just trade friction, it was uncertainty. Investors are cowards, they hate uncertainty. Between 2016 and 2020, while the UK government argued with itself about what Brexit actually meant. Hard Brexit, soft Brexit, red, white, and blue Brexit, businesses just sat on their hands. Why build a factory in the Northeast if you don't know whether you'll be able to sell the products next year? Why set up your European headquarters in London if the rules might change? So they went to Dublin, they went to Amsterdam, they went to Paris. We voluntarily imposed sanctions on ourselves. Now, is Brexit the only reason the economy is broken? No, we were stagnant before 2016. But Brexit was a multiplier. It took a fragile, low investment, low productivity economy and threw sand in the gears. It was the final nail in the coffin of the UK's reputation as a stable, boring, safe place to park your money. And in finance, chaos is expensive. But that was just the warm-up. Now we need to talk about the demographic time bomb that nobody in politics has the guts to address. If housing is a pyramid scheme, the UK welfare state is fast becoming a Ponzi scheme. And I'm sorry, but we need to talk about grandma. The UK is aging rapidly. By 2040, nearly 1 in 4 people will be over 65. Now, people living longer is generally good. We like that. But economically, it's a math problem, and the numbers don't add up. We've created a system designed to protect the old at the expense of the young. Exhibit A, the triple lock. The state pension is guaranteed to rise every year by whichever is highest: inflation, average earnings, or 2.5%. Think about what that means. If the economy crashes and wages fall, pensioners still get a raise. If inflation explodes, pensioners get protected. Meanwhile, the people actually working and generating wealth have seen their wages stagnate for 15 years. The result, we've achieved something historically bizarre. The average pensioner in the UK is now less likely to be in poverty than the average working family. We are taxing the working poor to subsidize the asset-rich retired, and who pays for the health care of this aging population? You do. The tax burden in the UK is at a 70-year high. Why? Because the NHS is spending more and more on age-related conditions. And there are fewer and fewer workers to pay for it. Politics is a numbers game. Old people vote, young people don't. So policies are designed to keep house prices high, pensions generous, and inheritance taxes low, while tuition fees skyrocket and wages stagnate. It's a wealth transfer from the future to the past. If you're under 40, you're the designated driver at a party where everyone else is drinking champagne. On your credit card, and when you finally get the bill, the party will be over and everyone else will be gone. Now let's get in a helicopter and fly over the United Kingdom. Look down. If you were flying over Germany, you'd see multiple engines of growth. Berlin for tech and culture, Frankfurt for finance, Munich for industry, Hamburg for shipping. It's balanced. Now look at the UK. One engine. London, that's it. The inequality between London and the rest of the country is worse than the divide between East and West Germany before the wall came down. Let that sink in. In London, they just spent £19 billion on the Elizabeth Line, a shiny, air-conditioned, world-class railway. Meanwhile, in the north of England, people are commuting on trains that were built in the 1980s. They're slow, they leak, they're never on time. The government promised to fix this with High Speed 2, a bullet train connecting London, Birmingham, Manchester, and Leeds. And then they cancelled the northern bit. The train will now go from London to slightly outside Birmingham. That's it. It's the perfect metaphor: over budget, delayed, and giving up before it reaches the people who actually need it. This matters because productivity creates wealth, and London is one of the most productive places in Europe. But huge parts of the UK, Wales, the North East, Cornwall, are statistically poorer than parts of the former Eastern Bloc. We're running a country where the capital operates like Singapore and the provinces operate like post-industrial zones without a plan. You can't run a G7 economy on one city. When London sneezes, the whole country catches pneumonia. And when the rest of the country is left to rot, you get political instability, resentment, and a catastrophic waste of human potential. Imagine how many brilliant entrepreneurs are stuck in towns with no investment, bad transport, terrible internet. That's your lost growth right there. So here we are, 15 years of stagnation. A housing market that's a pyramid scheme, austerity scars that haven't healed, trade barriers we built ourselves. A demographic time bomb, regional inequality that would embarrass a developing nation. But the biggest cost isn't in the numbers, it's psychological. The British dream, the unspoken contract that said if you work hard, you'll buy a house, retire securely, and your kids will do better than you. That dream is dead. For the first time in modern history, the next generation is on track to be poorer than their parents. And when you break that contract, societies don't just stagnate, they fracture. We're already seeing it. Doctors leaving for Australia, engineers going to the US, researchers moving to Switzerland. Why? Because those countries can offer them a future, the UK can't. If you can't offer your young people hope, you won't have a country. You'll have a theme park with nuclear weapons. So is it over? Is the UK doomed to become a rainy museum island, surviving on nostalgia and American tourists? Not necessarily, but fixing this would require something British politicians have been allergic to for decades: telling the truth. To fix the UK, we'd need to bulldoze the planning laws and build millions of homes. We'd need to stop cutting investment budgets and actually build infrastructure for the long term. We'd need to admit that trade friction with our largest market is killing us and find a way to fix it. We'd need to tax wealth, not just wages, shift the burden from people working 60-hour weeks to people sitting on £5 million of unearned property wealth. It's doable. Countries have recovered from worse. Germany rebuilt from rubble. South Korea went from poverty to a tech superpower in one generation, but it requires letting go of the past. No more obsessing over statues and flags and World War II nostalgia. We need to stop acting like a retired empire and start acting like a modern, hungry, mid-sized nation trying to survive. The empire is over. The question now is whether we want to be a living country or a graveyard with a gift shop. Remember that number from the beginning, £11,000. That's what the system has cost you every year. That's the money that should be in your account, the holiday you didn't take, the house you couldn't buy. The future that was stolen while you were told to tighten your belt and work harder. You did everything right, the system failed you, and until we admit that, nothing will change.